Picture this: the Wild West, a land of cowboys, outlaws, and tax collectors. That's right, folks. While we often romanticize the frontier as a lawless paradise, someone had to keep the wheels of government turning. And that someone was the brave, or perhaps foolish, tax collector. Now you might be thinking, tax collector? In the Wild West? Surely you jest. But I assure you, dear viewer, this was a very real and very dangerous occupation. These intrepid individuals were tasked with venturing into the untamed territories, armed with little more than a ledger and a whole lot of courage. They represented the long arm of a government that many frontier folk had come out west to escape. These hardy settlers had carved out a life for themselves in the wilderness, and they weren't too keen on sharing their hard-earned gold with some far-off bureaucrats. As the story goes, Ketchum rode into town, guns blazing, determined to rob the local bank. Of course, Thompson made sure to give him a receipt. Proper documentation was crucial in his line of work. Many met grisly ends at the hands of angry citizens or opportunistic bandits. He'd ride in as a snake oil salesman, a circus performer, or even a mail-order bride. The vast, untamed wilderness of the West posed its own challenges. Tax collectors often had to traverse treacherous mountain passes, ford raging rivers, and cross scorching deserts, just to reach the next settlement. The debate ended only when a sudden stampede scattered both the cattle and the tax collector's carefully organized paperwork to the four winds. Many disappeared into the wilderness, never to be seen again, their ledgers forever unbalanced. Their efforts, however unpopular, helped fund the infrastructure and institutions that would eventually transform the lawless territories into thriving states. Tax collectors were often run out of town on a rail, tarred and feathered, or worse. It's said that when a group of claim jumpers tried to rob him of his collections, a posse of miners rode to his rescue, declaring, "Nobody cheats the government but us." Take Honest Abe Abernathy, who worked the Colorado goldfields in the 1860s. Armed with nothing but a pencil and a stern demeanor, the tax collectors of the Wild West may not have been the heroes we wanted, but they were the heroes we needed. Keeping the books balanced in a land where the only law was the law of the jungle, the Internal Revenue Code. Abernathy was known for his fair assessments and willingness to work with miners who were down on their luck. Now, if you'll excuse me, I think I hear the distant sound of hoofbeats. Time to make like a tax collector and ride off into the sunset. Until next time, partners, you'd often accept payment in gold dust, nuggets, or even mining shares, sometimes waiting years for a claim to pay off. One particularly creative community in Nevada reportedly paid their taxes entirely in pennies, several tons of them, dumped unceremoniously on the tax collector's front porch in the dead of night. Schools, courthouses, and even the occasional opera house sprang up, paid for by the taxes collected at great personal risk. But their legacy lives on in the tall tales and legends of the frontier. They may not have the same romantic appeal as gunslingers and outlaws, but these unsung heroes of bureaucracy played their part in shaping the American West. By the time the locals realized they'd been had, Pete was long gone, their tax money safely tucked away in his saddlebags. The job was so dangerous that the government often had to offer substantial bonuses just to get people to take it on. Some tax collectors even resorted to disguising themselves as traveling salesmen or preachers, hoping to collect their due before anyone realized their true identity. Thompson, who happened to be in town on business, calmly approached the outlaw and said, "Now, Mr. Ketchum, I believe you owe some back taxes on that stolen money. Shall we settle up now, or would you prefer an audit? Imagine, if you will, riding into a dusty town on the edge of civilization. How do you assess property taxes on a mobile home like a covered wagon? What's the going rate for a gold claim that may or may not pan out? Don't even get started on the complexities of taxing cattle drives that cross multiple territories. The locals eye you suspiciously, hands hovering near their holsters. You dismount, straighten your tie, and announce, 'I'm here to collect your taxes.' The silence is deafening, broken only by the distant howl of a coyote and the ominous click of a revolver being cocked. You see, in the Wild West, tax collectors were about as welcome as a rattlesnake in a sleeping bag. But the job had to be done. Someone had to fund the expansion of the railroad, the establishment of new territories, and the occasional peace treaty with Native American tribes. And so, the tax collectors saddled up and rode out, often with a bounty on their heads before they'd even collected a single cent. Now, you might be wondering, how did these brave souls survive? Thompson earned his nickname not for his prowess with firearms, but for the two revolvers he carried, one loaded with bullets, the other with coins. He claimed he could make change faster than any man alive, a skill that came in handy when dealing with reluctant taxpayers. Well, they developed a unique set of skills that went far beyond basic arithmetic. They became part accountant, part diplomat, and part gunslinger. A successful tax collector in the Wild West needed to be quick with numbers, quicker with words, and quickest of all with a six-shooter. Take, for example, the tale of Two Gun Thompson, a legendary tax collector who worked the Arizona Territory in the 1870s. Thompson's most famous encounter was with the notorious outlaw Blackjack Ketchum. Legend has it that Ketchum was so taken aback by Thompson's audacity that he actually paid his taxes before riding off into the sunset. But not all tax collectors were as lucky as Thompson. One particularly crafty tax collector, known only as Slippery Pete, was said to have a different disguise for every town he visited. But it wasn't just the threat of violence that made the tax collector's job difficult. And then there were the unique challenges of frontier bookkeeping. One tax collector in Wyoming reportedly spent 3 days trying to explain to a group of ranchers why their cattle were taxable, but the tumbleweeds blowing across their property were not. Despite these challenges, the tax collectors of the Wild West played a crucial role in taming the frontier. Of course, not everyone saw it that way at the time. But for every tale of woe, there are stories of tax collectors who managed to win over even the most reluctant citizens. Abernethy's patience and understanding earned him the respect of the mining community. As the West became more settled and civilized, the life of the tax collector became somewhat less perilous. So the next time you're grumbling about filing your taxes, spare a thought for those brave souls who once saddled up and rode into danger. Remember, in the immortal words of Two Gun Thompson, you can run from the law, you can hide from the hangman, but sooner or later, the taxman always collects his due.